Children of incest, how to feel about your existence. I've been going to therapy weekly here lately, and it has definitely helped already. Just to be able to speak uncensored is such a blessing. I'm a product of consensual first cousin incest, and yeah, it's a struggle sometimes. Especially when I was younger and other families in church knew about it. It's embarrassing to say the least now I'm older and I've learned to be more chill about it. There's nothing I can do to change it, and I don't interact with church people anymore, so no one knows unless I tell them. At least you, I assume, don't have any diseases, health issues as a result of it like I do. It's definitely harder to cope with news like this if it was an unconsensual situation that resulted in your birth. Anyway, that's all I have to say at this time, lol. So, this is some I don't really talk about, but here we are. My great-great-nan on my matrilineal side has 14 kids. She came from Rom, married a Gorger and moved into a tiny house in rural Somerset, England. By all accounts was miserable. Her family left her as was their way. Anyway, amongst the children were 2 sets of twins, 1 set of girls and 1 set of fraternal. Boy and girl, middle of the pack, always side by side, grew up together, shared a language, shared a bath, shared a bed. They were known to be slightly creepy, didn't make friends, didn't go to school, tried, but they wouldn't stay separated, so their da tried to teach them bits at home. It was accepted they were slow. Eventually, around 14 years old girl twin got a belly on her. Huge uproar. Who had knocked her up? Parents convinced local farmhands lads must have. They refused to believe it was her brother. Of course it was. Twin bro knocked up his twin sister. My nan never was able to tell me what happened to the baby. I know the twins died young. The boy first, the girl not long after. I also know a couple of the kids went back with the people. So maybe the baby went with them. My nan's mom was the younger sister of the twins and told her all about it. There was a lot of shame for the whole family. A lot of finger pointing. I can't imagine it would have been a healthy child either. Obviously I don't know the whole story, but it's not your fault. It has nothing to do with you as a person. You are you. You are here. You are alive. Some people have boundaries with parents, which is fine, and others have great relationships. I went to school with someone from a different culture than myself, and she has to marry a relative to maintain the family tree. She was happy. She still is happy with a beautiful family. And no one is here to judge. It's not our business. I had some friends growing up, and it came out that they were the result of incest. I remember the day they were told. It was horrible. They were close-ish friends of the family, and my parents already knew and had told me a year or so prior. To make things worse, they knew the middle child was a result of an affair the mom had. But she never fessed up to that. So she still believes she's a child of incest. Not quite answering your question, I know. But I did think of them the other day and hope they were okay. I would honestly look into therapy. We often think that things happen. We deal with it, and then move on. For small things, sure. But for bigger things, they get reprocessed over and over again as we get older. The way you process it at 10, 20, 30 and beyond is different each time. It would be very helpful to have a professional help you. My mother was raped by my grandfather, and I am the product of that rape. I don't often think about it, except when the concept of abortion comes up. My grandfather sent my mother to get an abortion, and while she was laying there in the stirrups, she had a change of heart. She came home with my grandmother, and they lied and told him that she was too far along in the pregnancy for an abortion. Then left his sorry ass. As I said, I don't often think about it, but when I do, I feel grateful to be alive, because I came seconds away from being a statistic. Nobody chose to exist. But we're glad you're here. Incest is only a problem because it increases the chance of genetic disease that may run in the family. But you had no control over that and can also be perfectly normal. The royal families were notorious for it back in the day. It's unusual, but you don't have to feel shame. Seek therapy if you need it. But again, we, strangers on the internet and the real people who love you, are glad you exist. I do not have a personal experience with this, but can offer a one from the perspective of someone who dated an avid family historian. My then girlfriend studied the church records of her family living in eastern Finland. At best they went back about 400,500 years. For context, this area used to be a wilderness dotted with small villages and a minuscule population. So some accidents were prone to happen. In the end, as is the case with much of these types of areas, as I understand, the family tree keeps on looping in on itself again and again. The final product of my ex's family tree was more like a bamboo than an oak. It's basically impossible to say what types of relationships these people had and who was truly related to whom. That type of info was not recorded anywhere. It is more than likely that the official records are just a small snapshot of the inbreeding that was going around. I have a few conclusions I've drawn from this. People lived like this for millennia and survived. Everyone probably has some amount of inbreeding in their lineage because widespread travel and big populations haven't been the norm for very many generations in most places. This type of stuff was used to be common, and it didn't make the people living in the past any worse than us. Maybe a few nobles who took the idea a bit far. Nobody can be at fault for being born. You just do best with the life allotted to you. Every single human alive today has at least a little bit of incest in their family tree. For me, about 5 generations ago, a pair of my great-great-great-great-grandparents were first cousins. I'd have to check documentation on this for accuracy, but it was something like that. How I feel? It's just a statistic. Doesn't matter. Royalty does it frequently and they ain't special. A few ancestors do it? Meh. I am not a child of incest and I don't know anyone in that position, but can I respectfully ask those that are whether the relationship's legal status would change how you feel about your situation? I am not trying to defend or justify incest, but I live in the UK where there's no legal restriction on marrying your first cousin and I guess by extension having kids with them. Incest, in the legal sense, in the UK is only sexual relations with parent, sibling, child or grandparents. If you're the child of first cousins, would you feel differently if their relationship wasn't legally classified as incest? It's actually not too big of a deal. Incest can lead to some genetic deformities. If you're writing something out on Reddit, you're probably A-okay. When it gets really bad is when it's multi-generational. Like siblings having kids and their kids having kids together. That's when the genetic pool starts to get exponentially worse. Jeff Goldblum's parents, or at least one of them, was from an incestual relationship. I think his grandparents were cousins or something. Not a huge deal if it doesn't happen repeatedly. Like I said, a lot of pre-1900s and even pre-1800s saw inbreeding in communities because they were so close-knit. My great-great-grandparents were cousins. There was no one that lived near them in their particular Appalachian mountain community. Plus, back then there wasn't the scientific knowledge of genes and DNA. I wouldn't worry about it or let it stress you out at all. Whatever happened was beyond your control. You're not any less of a human being. It's quite common throughout history. I knew this family growing up that was known to be inbred. One of their sons was a genius and went to a prestigious engineering school. I think he works in medical robotics now. His family was at least 2 generations of inbred. Very nice guy. My older sister had some classes with him. It's somewhat weird to say. You know that if the wrong person finds it, you may be the focus of a lot of jokes. But after that, there's nothing to be ashamed about. It isn't your fault. After all, in my case it didn't even affected me directly. And it's a very dramatic story to tell. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother from my mother's side were siblings. They didn't know until after they were married and had sons. And it messed with my great-grandfather's mind a lot. He ended up with a lot of mental problems because of this, giving himself to alcohol, and died in really strange circumstances. My grandma was a writer, and wanted to publish a book about their story, but her brothers didn't let her because of how strange it was. I resumed it a lot, but it has more details and ramifications, and because they were embarrassed by it. If you like to know, nobody on my family got any problems nor sicknesses because of this. That we know of. We were lucky, I suppose. Edit. Look at it this way. Even though it is truly strange, if my grandma wasn't born, all my family would have never existed. Even though she was the product of a mistake, she made the best of it, and we are here because of her. It doesn't matter how you were born. You are you, and it doesn't have to impact your life if you don't let it. You shouldn't be so embarrassed for something you couldn't control or choose for yourself. You are alive now and doing well, that's all that matters. How you came to be isn't something to dwell on, but more what are your personal identity. You are more than just that. I'm a product of first cousin incest where I'm from. This is a very common occurrence, and it does not mean there was any kind of coercion involved. Here, a few decades ago, it was common practice. I've known I'm a child of incest for as long as I can remember, and it's never been a problem in any way at all. Not your fault. In the words of Rick, you didn't ask to be born. You shouldn't see yourself any differently than if you never found out. Not a product of incest myself, but I have 2 children with a rare genetic problem that my husband and I are both carriers for. There is a slight chance, if you believe family legends on both sides, that we may share a common ancestor like 150 years ago, or more. Personally, I think it makes sense that we do. It gives the recessive gene a logical origin. As the parent in a non-incest but genetic issues situation, I end up with a lot of guilt. I am very proud of my sons. Would never have wanted them to not be born even if we'd known. Depression is a valid thing. Please, if you need some help adjusting, get it. I promise you that your parents wouldn't want a world without you. You are valuable and loved. Don't let anyone insinuate otherwise. The circumstances of your birth are not your fault, and you are no less of a person than anyone else. Please remember that. It's probably mostly in your own power to not be affected by this, as you've managed to be a person with good self-esteem before you found out. Try finding gratitude for everything that worked out, such as, hopefully, not having deformities or hemophilia due to close genetic links of your parents. You get to live this life, and there's really no reason not to frame this situation in as much positive light as you can, to let you get on with your life and be as healthy and happy as possible. Hey there. Sorry this situation causes you distress. I get it. While I'm not a child of incest per se, I do have a number of genetic, hereditary health issues because of long-term inbreeding in my family. I will not go into details. Suffice it to say that I spend a lot more time at the hospital than I would like. And rarely do I come out entirely unscathed. To me, this has affected my overall quality of life and my self-esteem, to the point where I wonder if I will ever have some degree of normalcy. Health-wise, I feel helpless and undesirable. It's quite unfair.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.